And thank you for everybody else who's on the call. I'm not sure if you guys started yet, but let's go ahead and start by going through and doing some intros. I think everybody by now who knows who I am. So I'll pass it off to Kate since she's on Zoom, on video.
Hey, everybody. So my name is Kate Scarcella. I'm out of the Northeast area. And basically, I am a cybersecurity architect and have been for about 20 plus years. Worked for IBM and actually have my master's in this stuff way back before it was even popular. There was 4 people in my graduating class. So anyway, nice to meet you all.
You're a trendsetter. You're a trendsetter.
I like that. I'll take that.
Anybody want to step up and go next?
Sure, I'll go next. Jude Wellington. I've been a part of the CDF for many, many years. Kind of in its inception, I was involved. I was the event marketing manager at CloudBees, which was an enterprise Jenkins company. It still is, I think, for a better part of 8 years, and gone through lots of transitions after, the regular rounds of layoffs that tech companies have. So now I am running my own business. I am the founder and principal event director of a company called ITMP. We launched that business actually back in 1993, and that was just basically an event DJ company. We did all kinds of corporate events and weddings and all of that. Now we're very much a brand which we are trying to expand on a global scale. Why the DJ culture and lifestyle is so important to event professionals as well as to other people who find music to be a part of what makes them happy. And we've been able to kind of weave that into so many things. And one of the models within our company is event services. And so I, as an event organizer, I have been a meetup organizer for the Jenkins area meetup in the San Francisco Bay Area since its inception. And I've always loved Jenkins. And not that I'm a developer or anything like that. I just see what developers say when it runs and it saves their butt for whatever reason. They've told me so many times at trade shows that Jenkins has been always so helpful. And I really appreciated that. I really loved working with KK and working with Sasha. And that's kind of how it always had stuck with me, is to figure out how to be a better community organizer for the Jenkins community. And that's the reason why I'm here, because I really want to get that community back, because I know that there's definitely a lack of support that the Jenkins community has. And I think that's my goal today.
Awesome. Anybody next?
Guess I can go. So hey, I'm Anne Marie. It's interesting, small world. I grew up in Cleveland, like
All
Kate.
right. Woo, Cleveland rocks.
Yes. And I also lived in Berlin for a couple of years.
Wow.
Yep, 2021 to 2020.
There you go.
Like Roxanne did. So, but I lived here in North Carolina for the longest. So my interest in this, I guess I started in the application security automation space around 2018 when I was at IBM. We were trying to make a whole bunch of web applications compliant with our enterprise security standards and all the privacy standards. And we found that it was impossible to do that manually. So we started automating it using a combination of Jenkins and Tecton and Travis CI pipelines. So that was a lot of what I was working on for like 2018 to 2021, I guess you would say. Went to work for Red Hat, and there I was the lead architect for a couple of years on the Conflux and Trusted Application Pipeline projects at Red Hat. So that was using Tecton automate a lot of security checks as part of your build and deployment process. About a year ago, I changed focus so that now I primarily work on AI. And I am definitely interested in how we can start to automate the same sorts of checks for artificial intelligence artifacts and applications that use it, get those into the CI world. So that's my interest in all this.
Cool.
I'm Roxanne. I work for the Continuous Delivery Foundation. I've been there since 2020. And I do all of the content. I organize the events and all that stuff. And I do the website. And so I'm here to support the SIG, promote what you're doing and help you if you have any questions about internal stuff. So yeah, I'll just be lurking and listening.
Well, thank you, Roxanne. It helps to have somebody from the CDF here. It really does. Thank you for joining.
Is that it?
Okay, I can
No,
go
we
next
have
then.
several others.
Yeah, so hi all, my name is Pavel, I'm from Poland, so far away from you, I think. Roxanne, close to you, I think. You probably heard about OpenTOEFL, so I am the one of the guys behind that, because I was in the company last year. But they fired me anyway. Today I am a cloud architect for small Polish company. We work mainly with only with AWS. Also recently we published with a couple of people, we published the CI/CD design patterns book. So as you can see already, CI/CD is kind of in my interest in different aspect of CI/CD. From other perspective, I organize AWS Community Day in Poland, DevOps Days in Krakow and in Warsaw, and we will have the first Kubernetes Community Day this year. Of course, I am there as an organizer as well. Yeah, so enough, I think.
Oh, awesome, Powell. Thank you for showing up. You've got the right background for this group.
Thanks.
Hello everyone, my name is Nish Gaffney. I'm from Dublin, Ireland, but I am originally Swedish. I work for An Garda Síochána, which is the Irish police force, and I'm a senior manager, but I have a strong technical background because I've worked in IT since the 80s. Spent most of my life as solution architect, enterprise architect across a broad range of fields, but also managed a lot of global teams. Currently, my organization is in the process of implementing Red Hat OpenShift and trying to change the culture, not just within my department, which is technical architecture, but across IT and AGS. So short and sweet.
Fernando or
Hello.
Eduardo?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Fernando. I'm currently a researcher at TU Berlin. My focus is in particularly on how to give trustworthiness into CI/CD pipelines. And yeah, it's nice to meet you all.
Awesome.
Hello, and I am Eduardo. I'm Portuguese, but I currently live in Estonia, which is a small country in the eastern side of Europe. And I work as a security engineer, more on the research side, specifically on applied cryptography and privacy enhancing technologies. And actually, together with Fernando, we work in a couple of big European Union projects where we focus on integrating security practices, for instance, into the DevOps lifecycle. It's one of our current research directions. For instance, leveraging trusted execution environments, zero knowledge proofs, and many other of the new security mechanisms into the software lifecycle.
That is the challenge, I think, that, introducing these new mechanisms into the software lifecycle is really what we're here all to discuss. That is I think, the $1 million question for 2025. There's new tools being created and new projects every day to help improve this stuff, but most of it's command line driven and nobody's going to execute it, outside of a workflow. So thank you everybody very much for being for joining today. I can't tell you how it warms my heart to know that so many people from around the world are seriously interested in solving this problem. Let me go through some just kind of housekeeping items that we need to take care of. One of the first things we should do today is vote for a chairperson to lead this project. I say that because I've sort of spearheaded this, but I have a really full plate, as you guys all felt this morning when I was late. I'm on several different boards, and I feel like I'll be at all the meetings and I'll be pushing everybody as hard as I can to solve some of these problems. But I feel like we should have a particular chair of this group that can keep us all notified, can keep us all together, and knows how to herd cats, basically. This is a SIG. We can run it any way we want. My suggestion is that we consider the people on the call, the people who are those who should vote, and of those of you who would be interested in being if anybody's interested in being a chair, please raise your hand and let's just go for it and select somebody. Yes, Kate has showed an interest from the very beginning, and she has a spectacular background for it. So I would second Kate's nomination.
I would third it.
So decided.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's let the notes reflect that anybody object to Kate's nomination? Great, then I will put in the notes that we elected Kate with no objections. Let me see. Okay, the team elected. Sorry, I have to talk and do notes at the same time. As the committee chair person. Okay, so Roxanne, note that if there's anything that Kate needs to be added to, if you could add her to that as the chair. So I'm guessing that in the future you'll get emails and whatnot from through the CD Foundation, but Kate will be driving that, so you may get notifications from Kate. So watch for that name as it comes across, and know that it's not spam. The next thing I want to cover, and I've thought about this quite a bit, is how we can structure this. So I think I've let everybody know that this website is now out there. It's not been advertised in any way outside of the folks in this room and other people who have joined. And there's probably been, I'd have to look at the group, but I'm guessing we have about close to 20 people who have indicated an interest. And with any of these SIGs, we'll see people floating in and out. But let me just go through my logic and how I broke down how I see the best way to move forward with solving the problem. I broke out solving the problem in 3 phases. I didn't want to do the dev test build or the dev test prod kind of traditional CI/CD phases because I don't know how well they fit into what we're trying to do. Because every environment has a deploy. So you could have a dev environment, you could have a test, you could have a dev workflow, a test workflow, and a production workflow. We all know that. So I broke it into code and pre-build security steps, build and deploy security steps, and then post-deploy security steps. Now there's some psychology to it as well. Everybody knows that we as humans, we like things in 3s. So I felt this was a good way to structure it. If you go into the way this website is set up, I copied the CDF best practices website and then made some modifications so it's ours. I'm envisioning, if I'm a DevOps engineer and I'm going to this site, I want to be able to say, okay, what do I need to be looking at in code and pre-build steps? And I want to be able to find sections and tooling that fits what I'm trying to do. So right now, as opposed to having some blank pages, I just went ahead and put some tools out there that I know are open source, that I know that teams are using, like SonarQube and Veracode are super popular. So we could have some pages out there. But what I'm envisioning is it goes beyond just a listing of tooling, but it also includes compliance information. Now let me see if I can go. Am I sharing my screen?
No.
No. You guys are so nice. All right, so here's the website. Quickly do a quick recap. You guys heard what I said. I will put it in the chat. And so the website, it's a Hugo server, it's a Hugo site with a Doxy background, with a Doxy, with Doxy. There's really only, there's the join our team that gives information about how to join. There's a resources page that Jude has kind of volunteered to start looking at for meetup events and keeping resources up to date. And then there's the guide. And the guide is built on Doxy. It's got right now 3 chapters based on the 3 phases from the front page. And what I've done is just listed to have some data in there, listed some tools to, because it just looked weird to have nothing out there. I wanted to give us a start that made it look right. There's somewhat of an introduction, but not much on each page. So that's where we're at. So I'm not sure how we want to move forward, but I would have to say that understanding how we want to structure the discussion will be important. And if anybody has a better idea of, in terms of these groupings, these phases, I think it would be a good time to have a discussion about it now. And maybe we can continue that to our next meeting and then finalize what they should be. If they're these, that's great. But if we need to add, I'm happy to add some sections so that we can move forward with what I would envision that we would do, as we might have groups. Some folks are going to be interested in a natural selection to work on code and pre-build steps, others build and deploy steps, others post-deploy steps. So this helps structure the process so we can get more done. But as I was going to say before I realized I wasn't sharing my screen, if we look at Kate has already done some work in this area. Let me see if I can pull this spreadsheet up really quick here. Kate, do you happen to have that?
I think it was a security reference. You just passed it. Go down.
Right here, the security model.
One more down. Oops.
Oh, was it? Okay. Try again.
It was like in the 3rd section. Okay, right. It's called Security Reference
Right here?
Architecture. Right
There
there.
we go.
And
now this has and I'll let Kate talk about it, but this has, a capability model associated to it. It has definitions, and it has already some, an idea of mapping tooling to the stage. And there's this thing that she's defined this in compliance levels. So I'd feel like, to make it simple, if we could create something that has, the DevOps kind of processes, code and pre-build to post deploy, along with what compliance means in each of those sections, and have a discussion about compliance and how to achieve it, and here are your tools. I want to really keep it, I don't want to say I'm going to dumb it down, but I want it to be very practical, very hands-on, where somebody can go to our site and say, oh, these are some cool tools to help me get to these levels of compliance. Now, whose compliance? That would be a different discussion. Considering we are with the Linux Foundation, we might want to be looking at some of the compliance levels like SALSA, or stuff that from the Secure Software Development Framework, and taking those concepts and building into these compliance discussions, and how to achieve them with the tools that are out there. And we should also identify gaps. So if there's not open source tooling and there's a gap in that area, we should just call it out and say, here's a gap. Because it may be something that an open source project might want to add to, if they're already doing security tooling, they may want to fill that gap. So I'm going to leave it there, open it up for discussion, and hear what you guys have to say.
if I may, one of the things that, I see. Okay, so one of the most, and Tracy, you spoke about dumbing it down. It's really, I don't think it's about dumbing it down. It's just about making something practical. for me, it has been what I talk about Groundhog's Day, where I feel as if we get involved, like the bigger the group gets, the more the things get added to, the more the things get added to, the more complicated something becomes, and then it almost, you know, breaks down. And so what I think is really important is just the simplicity of these models, and hopefully the simplicity of the models. And I've worked a lot with compliance, all different types of compliance, from, you know, from NIST to, you know, NERC. Anyway, the point being is that the simplicity of the model, of these models, will be the most important in order for it to be consumable. And I really do believe in like little, like Lunchables, really like bite-size type of chunks. That would, I would hope, be the theme that we're going to try to go for. A one-to-many type of, you know, relation.
Yes. I think that saying that it's not dumbing it down is a good thing, because we're not trying to. But we're definitely trying to make it simple and easy to reference. Anybody else? What about the 3 categories?
So Tracy, as we're trying to figure out how to spread the word with this SIG, I think the
Yeah.
key is to try and build awareness in a in-person type of event that allows for attendees to roll their sleeves up, fire up their laptops, and just get talking and get to collaborate and get to share ideas, share their concerns at these in-person meetups, which is why I think it's important that the CICD West Coast meetup group partners up with the other CICD meetup groups. There's one in Albuquerque, there's one in Austin, there's one in DC. We would like to figure out how can we expand those meetup groups into the Boston area as well as New York. I think those are key markets for us to be able to bring this SIG to those cities to get people to start to understand what we're trying to do. And the way to do it, in my opinion, is by way of sponsorships. I think without sponsorships, we are kind of just doing this internally and trying to figure out how are we going to afford the how are we going to come up with the resources to try and pay for these in-person type of events. And so one of the things that I did, let me share my screen real quick. So I created this sponsorship prospectus. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep,
Yes.
we can.
The very first company that raised their hand was CloudBees, because they need to have that awareness within this open source community. And of course, it's primarily Jenkins users that come to these type of meetup groups, but it's not purely a Jenkins community that they want outreach. They really want outreach in a broader perspective. So this is a perfect opportunity. They've actually raised their hand. They're like, we're willing to invest in the various cities that you all want to create these in-person meetups. And so I had to create a prospectus for them. And what I did is I just kind of went through exactly what information was on the website. I created this mission, which is exactly what's on the website. Here are some dates that we're hoping. The February 26th date, that date actually aligns with another organization called the North American DevOps Group, NADOG. If you are not familiar with NADOG, NADOG is another meetup group but there's a lot of sponsors, enterprise driven attendance. So there's a lot of sales folks and whatnot that go to that, and they do have talks and whatnot. So we thought, let's experiment. Let's figure out, is there a way we can have an open source community meetup on the same day as this, so this enterprise type of meetup. So our meetup would be the first group that get together, and then after our meetup concludes, everyone heads over to the NADOG meetup. And what I really hope that will happen, what will happen is we start to talk to each other about what is it that is really needed in the marketplace compared to what is it that the community is saying is needed, right? So there needs to be this convergence, in my opinion. I've been on both sides. I was a enterprise account exec for CloudBees. I was on the marketing side supporting the community, and there is absolutely a gap that we've got to figure out how to solve. And I think talking to each other at these in-person events actually is going to be very beneficial. So I'm hoping that February 26th would be a good one. The next one, and these are like the third Wednesdays of every month, would be nice to have these types of series. The link is, again, that same website that Tracy shared. I would be the point of contact. Here's all the table of contents. And again, the introduction is almost exactly what is identified on the website. We can add as many people as we want, but the vision is very clear. Our mission is very clear. The team members, we can add as many people who want to be involved in this, in the actual meetups as possible. So we've got room for that. The event, what we really want is we want to highlight guest speakers, subject matter experts, hands-on labs, workshops, thought leadership, and make it a little bit fun and engaging. It's going to be very important. And then the schedule. So as Tracy mentioned, I think the most important part is to break these down into the 3 categories. So the first meetup will tell everybody about the 3 categories that we want the work to be done in, but we're going to focus on code and pre-build on February 26th. Then on March 26th, we'll go to build and deploy. And then on April 23rd, we'll go to post and deploy, and we'll repeat, rinse and repeat over and over and over again. So people actually start to understand where they fit within these 3 segments, right? And try to build those experts to kind of help others understand what they need help with within these meetup groups. So the presenting sponsor would get logo placement, opportunity to lead a working group, featured in our communication. The event sponsors, these are the folks that are really, helping us, fund a lot of the other things, but they get logo placement, opportunity to participate. And then the packages would be 5,000 for a presenting sponsor, an event sponsor would be 1,000. And I shared this with CloudBees, and they're like, great, get more people. So I really think this is important. I think this is what we really need as part of our plan with this SIG, is to really get the word out, but also to meet in person and build that relationship and build that community, because I think it's important to let the community know that these in-person events are for them. It's nothing more than us trying to figure out, how do we help you? How do we help you talk to each other, solve problems together, try to figure out how to get you more involved, right? So that's kind of where things are at. I'm waiting for CloudBees to come back with an answer, because Sasha just stepped down. So there's some things that are going on at CloudBees. So I just have to kind of figure out what all that is, and then I'll report back to you. Any questions?
It's not a question, but we do have meetups, and I can post any event on there.
Mhm.
So when you're ready and you know where it is, I can just publish it there and obviously on the CDF website and promote it through our channels. The earlier I know, the more I can help.
Yeah. Yeah. So February 26th is our first target meetup. I am trying to align with the NADOG folks because I don't know exactly where, but once we know where, we'll get things moving. Okay. And we need a speaker.
I was going to ask if we have somebody lined up who could be a speaker. I don't know if I can make it to San Francisco by the 26th.
Yeah. I know Brian Dawson could be the closest, right? And that'll give him a reason to visit family, so that could work. I can check with him.
I'm here, Jude.
Oh, hey,
And,
Brian.
yeah, and I definitely could get up there. I'm going to be tight for time to focus on building a presentation, frankly. So I can get up and host, kind of MC, but assembling a talk may be a bit more of a challenge for me, considering my load.
So the building the presentation around code
Sorry,
and
Jude, real quick. Kate had a comment that may be relevant. I don't know if you saw her
sure.
raise her finger. Yeah.
Well, sure. So since we're going to start doing things as a group, I'm wondering if we should start to get presentations that all of us equally could present, with that same focus in mind, with why are we doing this? What are we seeing? And what are we trying to accomplish? So that the burden of, so first we're getting, this is why we're doing it. And all of us should be able to stand up and talk about this and about the experience and why we're doing this.
Sure.
Is that I wouldn't mind taking a go at, who doesn't like a good PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, and I'd be happy if and I'm sorry to jump in real quick. In terms of me being close and getting up on February 22nd, I believe if there was someone helping get the standard template content together,
Yeah.
I'd be perfectly comfortable presenting that if it needed to be me. So
And I almost think, Jude, that it's possible that we might want to, even though you have it broken out into the 3 groups, I think each one should just be like an intro to CI/CD in or security in CI/CD, so that we can do one template and we can share it in all 3 cities. Because I think right now, by February 26th, even by the April one, we probably don't have enough. We don't have enough answers to start talking about any one area. But if we want to do 3 that introduces this topic to get people starting to talk about it, then I think it'll be easier to have, to find people to present in those areas.
And again, what I what I know is going to happen is we're going to learn as we move through this. The key is doing them, right? That's the key. We have to get moving, right? We need to get some kind of awareness of what the community really wants, right? That's what I'm most interested in. We may have these, ideas of what they want, but I want to hear from them.
Yeah, me too. I do too. I want to hear what their challenges and what they're facing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best things that actually Tracy put together on the website were the personas. Because I think that's something important. Definitely, we can also talk about, because I think we don't want it. So when you look at the diagram that's in the chat right now, like IT for IT, I love the open group. That's where I came up with, I was working with the open group for that security architecture stuff that Tracy brought up. But it's like for many of us who are in the tech field, we can take a look at that and say, okay, hey, that's not a big deal. But for the majority of people, they look at that, especially if you're a C-level, and it's like, what the heck, Again, it's so important to bring this down to such a bite-size models that is consumable, I think, for anyone. And I will never forget a CISO saying to me, you guys always say I can do blah, 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 but then I have to go hire a person, for 200 grand to come in and put all the pieces together. I just want to do like a Amazon shopping cart. That's how easy I want. I mean, that's what I'm hoping we can deliver. And maybe that's my pie in the sky, you know, but I would love to have anybody sit down and say, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
We can, our goal is to make, I think our goal is to make things more secure at the end of the day.
And what I love about that breakdown by title is we can have events that are really hyper focused with those titles, where the goal, you know, that Kate really wants is getting that feedback from them. It's like, does this really resonate with you guys, and what do we need to do? If you feel that this is important, then I need your support. We need your buy-in. We need your influence to drive it down so we can get that going. And that's what's really nice about how it's broken down, because we can have meetings with the C-levels, we can have meetings with, you know, the directors and the implementers, right? Those are all very important, because it's hard for all of those folks to actually come together for these types of events. You know, the ones who do show up are, for the most part, you know, the developers and the engineers, right? They like to come to these, but you never see directors and above. You know, they rarely come. So we've got to get in front of them. And this really helps. That framework helps.
So I just have a couple of things. Roxanne, does the CDF still have fairly active ambassadors?
Yeah. And we're doing a new cohort. We're gonna open it up at the end of the month. So they will be even more active when they get onboarded.
Yeah.
So potentially, if we have a standard kind of PowerPoint that we can put together, we could share it with them to talk about it.
Yes. And if you want, if one of you is at CDCon, I can also book you a room to meet there, potentially, a meeting room if you need that in-person time.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do
Yeah.
that.
We would like to have some sort of event, you know, to really talk about this SIG at CDCon. I think it would be really important.
I mean, it's hard to find rooms since it's open source summit. I can probably swing a meeting room. It depends on the dates. I'm waiting for them to give us our like track days, and then I will ask them what's possible.
Yeah.
So if we can get a meeting room and a time schedule, it could be on the calendar then. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. If we can get that, I will be there. I'm sure there'll be more of us that have signed up, but they will be there.
Sounds good.
And then, you know, we just elected Kate as the chairperson. Do we want that to be for a 1-year or 2-year term? We should have probably figured that out before she volunteered.
I'd say let's make it a 10-year term. I mean, she
I was
signed.
gonna say, why not make it permanent? Yeah.
I'm going to put on here, we're going to make it a 2-year term. And Kate, if you need to resign for any reason, you can do
Okay.
so.
When the website is ready, I can also do an announcement and say that Kate is the chair, and you know, then people can
That would
join.
be great.
Yeah.
I will add to the website Kate's information under the join our group.
And
No,
I'm
I
learning.
think, if I may, because what you said about events is important, but first I think we should have some foundations for that. So the web page is one thing, but also if we want to keep like more, if you want to put it more into brains of people, we should have some materials which they can take physically during the meetup, right? So some kind of one page or something like that, right? With some basic information there, with the link to the web page, things like that, right? So we can of course print it ourselves, doesn't matter. because what you just showed is great, but it works, I think, mainly for your region, right? Especially looking on the prices and so on and so on and so on. Just to give you the like an impression, for 5,000 in Poland, you can have the full booth on the conference and have the platinum sponsorship, right? So so you know this is the difference, right? But I agree
So,
completely to have like a
to solve,
standard template for us.
so to solve that problem, Jude, is there a document that you can share across, or somehow create a document that different regions can update themselves?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good.
This is this is basically a Canva document that I created, so I can just share it, and you can make whatever changes you would like to make. If there's anything that needs to be standardized from a CDF perspective as to how sponsorship prospectus documents need to look, and whatever information needs to be included, it would be nice to have something that's a bit standardized. So, you know, Roxanne, if there's any feedback on that, that'd be great.
I can have a look. I also have
Yeah.
Canva.
Perfect. Great.
So what we'll do is, once Roxanne kind of gives it her branding blessing, then I'll add on the page under probably resources, or maybe where would we put
I think
something like that?
resources.
Yeah, put it under the resource page. I'll add the PD or whatever, a link, or however we're going to share that information.
Yeah.
We'll add that section.
And one of the things that I do have to make sure that we all understand is, when we start talking about sponsors want one thing, one of the most important things, and that is an email, right? That is their way of connecting and communicating with these contacts post-event, and that's what drives the resource dollars for us. So we have to be really clear that that is the expectation that these sponsors will want. And we just need to understand that those guidelines have to be very clearly, you know, explained as to what we can and cannot provide sponsors. Okay. So again, any of those types of guidelines are going to be very helpful, Roxanne.
Yeah.
And
I know the Jenkins community has always been very strict. Like, we cannot give out, you know, email addresses. If somebody wants to hand out T-shirts in exchange for an email, very similar to how DevOps Days does their programs, right? That model works, and that's totally fine if everyone is okay with that.
Yeah.
I'd have to check, like, you just give me the list and then I check with the Linux Foundation.
Okay. Sounds good.
And they have to, I know what they have to volunteer their information. I know
Correct.
that what makes sure.
If I get a list, I can't give it to anyone. But if someone's there and they give their email, I think that's their own thing, right?
Yeah. And we have plenty of Ortelius T-shirts to give away.
Yes. That's right. I need to send
that
you
was
my,
verified.
I need my Ortelius T-shirt. Yes.
Yes. And socks and stickers.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Just going back to like the very first question, which we kind of skipped right past. Like, are the three segments correct?
Thank you for going back to that, Anna Marie. Thank you.
We're like organizing events.
Yeah. You know, I personally wouldn't mind taking a shot at those. I mean, I think I would like to take a look at those three, just because I like the simplicity of the three. I know that diagram is really cool, that's been put in the chat. But if I wouldn't mind taking a look at those three deeper, you know, so that, I mean, so I don't, I have an overall cybersecurity background. So for those who are, you know, application security folks, you know, is the simplicity, is three just too little, or
The question I had, so I think that it makes sense. If you look at this chart, the 3 areas in pink on the left, we all know are really important. However, they don't have anything to do with CI/CD. So maybe it's okay. But then also post deploy, how much does CI/CD play in that, right? Like, why would you talk about post deploy, but not the things that happen before you start coding?
So yeah, let's look at this. So we're looking now then at the green and the blue and the lime colored. We have
Yeah.
All right,
develop,
so
we
I'll
have,
just explain the thinking behind why I created this. Because I'm responsible for a number of different teams and I come from a process background. And they've explained to the development team. So what I was saying, I was kind of just mapping everything I was saying. We all follow essentially the same approach. We figure out what the business case is. Then we do all the planning. Then the deploy test, deploy, build, test, develop, build, test, release, deploy, and then operate and manage, because I manage the operations teams as well. But then I work with ITIL people as well, who are responsible for the service desk and the configuration management piece. And then we're also part of the operations management fits. Now they think in terms of ITIL processes and not in terms of DevOps or DevSecOps. So I've put that in place. And then I happen to be particularly fond of IT for IT, because I think it's quite a simple, it's a fairly simplified view of the business of IT. So the value chain all the way to the flows. So it's a good way of using it as a translator. So when I'm talking to different people, I can say, well, what they're talking about is this piece here, and what you're talking about is that piece there. And then I've also added obviously Lean Six Sigma, just to kind of, because of a background of a green belt and Lean Six Sigma as well, just to kind of explain, if we're creating a new process from start, we use this. If we're updating an existing process, we use demake. Sorry, my voice is going. But I can then relate that to explaining how we develop process then to developers as well. So it's just a way of translating all of that. And then the piece at the bottom, which is kind of making everybody aware, regardless of what process or framework they're following, that they understand the security aspects all the way across. So that we don't just use security as an afterthought. Oh, let's stick in a firewall, but we actually design with security in mind. So it's slightly broader, I think, than what we're talking about. But it also depends. I think what I'm trying to get to is depends on who we're trying to talk to. I think if we're talking to people who already have a background in any one of these areas, this works well. But if I show this to someone who has no prior experience of whatever, let's say CI/CD or DevSecOps or whatever, they'll struggle a bit, because it will probably come across as being a bit complex. So I like the simplicity of the 3, but I think probably what will happen is when we open the lid of the 3, it will develop into something like this, further down the line when you look at it in greater detail.
Hal?
Yeah, I think it will be a good start for us. As you said, it's like broader concept here, right? So extracting what we would like to see in our approach, but building in kind of similar way, right? So going through layers from the top to bottom, that may be a way.
So
mean,
let me walk you through this in my DevOps mind. I'm a DevOps engineer, and I've got to add security tooling to this pipeline. If we look through the green, these 3 phases, let's talk about where they fit into our phases. Develop is in code, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are things in develop that you have to do before pre-build, before you run the build, that aren't just coding, like maybe adding security to your repos, those kinds of steps. The build and deploy go together, because that's what happens. You build and then you deploy. You may deploy to a test environment. You may deploy to a development environment. You may deploy to a production environment depending on the workflow you're executing. So if we see how if we look at these three, this would be code and pre-build, right?
Mhm.
This would be build and deploy. And this would be post-deploy. Testing is a post-deploy step.
Mhm.
You know, a release is a post-deploy step, if you think about it.
I agree.
It's so that's how and then operate and manage. Certainly there are areas in DAST, you know, dynamic application security testing, that we need to be doing. Another thing that would be in post-deploy would be an SBOM, generating an SBOM. And because oftentimes it's not done at the build, and they run it as a second step afterwards. So that would be I qualified that in a post-deploy step. So I feel like there are elements of this that is in any step in this process could fit into one. Even this stuff could be in code and pre-build, but there's no security stuff that I don't think that we would be adding to the workflow itself that is important for a DevOps engineer or a Jenkins administrator or, you know, somebody who's running a GitHub Actions. And that's really who we want to speak to. And when they build these workflows, they're building dev, test, and production workflows. The test workflow may just get called out after the build and deploy, right? So it's a post-deploy step, testing. Static code analysis, though, goes down here, and it goes in the build, right? Because the static is done at pre-build.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's
On the
why
beginning.
I said, and I've looked at so many of these models, and I tried to digest them down so that they didn't have a life cycle phase. Let's just put it that way. They were
Yeah.
actually the business that we have to do, because you may have, I mean, I've worked with companies who rebuilt every single time.
Yeah.
Right. So they had a production, they had a development workflow, a test workflow, and a production workflow. And in every single step, they did they recompiled, because they wanted to make sure that they didn't have, you know, compile flags that they needed to adjust for a production release, like taking debug out, or just being able to align configurations for creating containers to run in a production environment. So any one of those could be in a workflow, but they're going to be they're going to be code and pre-code, and code and pre-build, build to deploy, and post-deploy. So if anybody, please take a hack at it. I think we should continue this conversation for our next call. And since
Okay.
we're past our time, even though I've caused us to be late, we should end it for today. But this is a really important conversation, because I feel like we have to disrupt the model as we recognize it today in order to bring in some of the new tooling that's out there. There's like in toto, where do we put in toto? That's auditing the entire workflow. Where does that go? I put it in a post-deploy step. But where should it go? You know, maybe we audit the workflow, but you have to wait till you do the workflow before you audit it, so it fell in post-deploy. And that's why I struggled with putting it in any type of association with any physical environment, like a test environment, a dev environment, or a production environment. So I had to sort of break my own understanding of how a DevOps pipeline looks. But I do think that these kinds of conversations around this, you know, anything that we're doing around idle, anything we're doing around compliance, we should be able to add to our sections and document why we would do these. What are these? Why are we doing it? Why is the signature important? Let's talk about attestation. We don't ever talk about attestation in the DevOps pipeline. We talk about it in security references, but that should be done in some kind of code and pre-build step. So these are the tough discussions we're going to have, and I think all of us are going to have to take what we know now about the DevOps pipeline, and then throw a grenade into it and put it back together in a simple way that a DevOps engineer could go to our website and says, they're trying to reach these levels of compliance, and we can't even do, we can't succeed with OpenSSF scorecard because we're not doing any of it, right? So let's look at scorecard and see where you're supposed to be doing these steps in scorecard. That's what I'd like to get to. Because we
Yeah,
all have
ultimately,
all created these beautiful designs,
Yeah.
but on this one, it's going to be different.
And
it's
I,
these universal best practices within each of these categories, right? What does everyone agree on is those most common best practices. And if you don't know it, we're here to help you understand it, right? And then from there, break those best practices down and have conversations on how to build those best practices the best way that it can be built, right?
Right. And I want to remind us all, we are let's just, as a general statement, we're DevOps engineers. We're not security engineers. We want to take what's out there and teach people how to implement it and where it goes. We
At
want to
least
be
part
the
of us.
DevOps engineer. Yes. We are DevOps engineers. Now, Kate is not a DevOps engineer. She's
no,
leading the
but,
charge on the security side.
but if I may just add a really quick story. So, when cybersecurity really started to come into view, we would do, from IBM, we would do these 3-month workshops, security workshops, and by the time we were done with the workshop, everything that we had done 3 months ago was gone, like finding the data, where's the data? And so then we got it down to like 10 days. And then all of a sudden it was down to like 2 days. And then it was like, it's still not working. We got it down to 4 hours, a huge cybersecurity workshop where we were able to do a whiteboarding session and do low-hanging fruit. And everybody, from all the different teams and C-level people and everybody, like, not only got together and said, yes, this works. That's what I'm hoping for. What I'm
Yeah.
hoping
Me
for
too.
is blowing things up and just saying,
Yes.
because we're losing the fight, So let's do this. I'm going to put together some slides, and
Yep.
I love slides.
Yep. And I think we're
Good.
gonna so I think Kate as our guest speaker, we'll work together, Kate, to get
Yeah.
you on remotely. Don't need to fly in unless you want to fly in, but yeah.
It's a little bit short notice right now, but
Yeah. We can
I'll
get you on
connect with you offline.
Yeah.
Do I have your email? Will you
Yeah.
send me your email? Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
But
Right,
we
great.
do need to keep in mind, I think all of us are thinking, Anne Marie and Powell, and many of you have mentioned it, we need to make sure we have some we have some concrete teeth in our
Yes.
documentation. But we can still move forward with outreach, saying, we have started this group, we want your participation, we want your input, we want to know what your challenges are so we can make the product that we're delivering better. So I feel like we can still move forward with Jude's outreach program as long as we're framing it correctly and people know that this is a new group and we're just getting started and we got work to do.
Yeah.
And if I just may, and people, just one more last thing, and I keep saying this, but one of the things I've also noticed is that there is so much information out there that people are overwhelmed. I like saying, hey, this is the problem. This is where we think we need to be. This is the path that we want to take. Now give us your feedback. Not an open-ended like, hey, what do you think we should do? More
Right.
like, these are the steps we're going to take.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of
Yeah.
that?
I agree. Absolutely.
And feed people.
Oh, yes. So my question to the group right now is, does anybody feel like we should meet every 2 weeks for now, so we can get working on, maybe next 2 weeks we talk about updating the documentation? Or if anybody would like to take a stab at it to make sure that the website is, because I already have security over, I already have admin access all over this, so I can't tell if you can easily go out there and start updating the documentation. So I would encourage you all to take a stab at creating a pull request and adding something to the docs and make sure that it's easy to do.
And I'm here to help if it's not.
Thanks, Roxanne.
Because don't hesitate to start taking a stab at any of this documentation. This is an open source community. You take a stab at it. We start getting a structure out there, and somebody's going to come up with a brilliant way of saying, here's the compliance levels we're talking about. Here's open source, the scorecard the items that you should be doing in this phase. Here's what the secure software development framework says about this phase. And I know that that's stuff that many of you can do, probably sit down in 15 minutes and crank that stuff out.
What I need help
So-
with is a registration landing page for each of these meetups, right? So people can see it. They go to our website. It's an actual landing page where there's registration information.
We can do that. We can do that through an iframe through the meetup registration, I'm pretty sure. I can help you with that.
Okay, great.
Should I reschedule for every 2 weeks for now, or?
I think it's a good idea.
Yes.
I'll do that tomorrow.
And for those of you who are not in North America, is this time okay? Okay, great.
I can go earlier if needed. No. All right.
All right, it sounds like we have done a lot
Okay,
today. Again, thank you.
thanks.
And Kate, we're looking forward to your leadership.
Oh, thank you. All right, everybody. Have a good
All right.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
couple
Bye.
weeks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.